Welcome to Purdue Crop Chat, a regular podcast from Hoosier Ag Today and the Purdue University Extension Service, featuring Purdue Extension soybean specialist Dr. Shaun Casteel and Extension corn specialist Dr. Dan Quinn. Now your host for Purdue Crop Chat, Hoosier Ag Today's Eric Pfeiffer.
Welcome into another edition of the Purdue Crop Chat. Thanks for joining us. I'm Eric Pfeiffer. We're in Het Studio 3A. And I'm telling you, we're just going to make this thing look different maybe every time you tune in. Dan and Shaun walked in today and they were like, again, something different? We're just trying to improve things, folks. We're just trying to do things a little bit different here and there.
He's just trying to make us look better, and it's a lot harder than what he thought it was going to be.
Well, I'm not a miracle worker, guys. I can only do so much.
Pretty soon it'll just come to the point that it's just our voices, like work time on just radio, because you can't improve much. It's like, okay, we're going to just get rid of the faces altogether.
Even with the technology today, it's still pretty hard.
Yeah, I mean, we could try some AI stuff and, get you guys looking pretty.
Or whatever, yeah.
But we're here. We're here to do another edition of the Purdue Crop Chat, and here with the stars of the show, obviously, Dan Quinn. How you doing, Dan?
Good, Eric.
And Soybean Shaun Casteel.
How's it going, Eric?
Oh, just fantastic. It's been an interesting couple of weeks here since we've last been together. I think a lot's gotten done. A lot has gotten done.
Even Dan, he's got a lot in the ground. It's like, you follow the soybeans and the planters, like, I'll wait. And then I think he just came on strong. It's like that horse that's just going to come in the back and like going to blow past you. So there's a lot been done.
Yeah, a lot been done. We had to reschedule a few times. Us faculty, we do work, but don't get me that. We go into our tea times, but we get a few things done.
You had to stand out somewhere to direct people where to go so you can get a nap in after you got them started. But here we are, end of May. We're past Memorial Day here, and we are looking at just, Memorial Day holiday did put our crop progress report back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at a day late here, and we are really trying to just see where we're getting with this crop progress, because man, we're getting awfully close, and we've had a lot of good stuff here. If you look at last week's report, 67%, and I'm sorry, I've got to do that. 67% planted on both crops.
I think he needs to do better than that.
Yeah, 67%.
We're trying to attract the younger audience.
Yeah.
Which in that point is like so 2025, right?
Apparently, yeah. 6, 7. I mean, my kids, I still don't know what it means. Do you know what it means? Do you have any idea?
Nothing.
No,
it means nothing.
It means nothing.
It was one of the first things where now I've realized that I've gotten old. Like now I'm like, I don't know what the heck these kids are talking about.
It's apparently some song.
It's just a brain rot. That's all it is.
Brain rot.
And my kids just started doing a different number. I don't know. I just don't know any of them. But
well, that goes along with you in general. You normally just don't know things.
I don't know things.
But you ask an insightful question.
I make things up as I go, and that's the way the news works nowadays.
You said it. You said it. Not me.
No, but 67% planted. That's as of last Monday for both crops, and both crops 42% emerged. And when we get this down again, I mean, boy, we're going to be what, in the 80s, Dan? What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're probably in the 80s now. And you look at the forecast this week, I bet you the nail in the coffin is probably going to come this week, and it'll be at about 100% after this week. I mean, weather for a lot of the areas, I think there's a little bit of rain coming in maybe the southern portion of the state, but a lot of those folks have been ahead and been done. But a lot of the areas you look at east, northeast Indiana, where some of that, they've had the challenging rains and kind of been caught behind a little bit. I bet you they'll finish up this week. So forecasts look really good. A lot of crops, you'd be hard pressed now, and except in certain areas where you'd see fields that weren't planted. But most fields have been planted, and most fields the crops are up and look pretty good around the state.
And soybeans, I imagine. Same situation.
Yeah, it is. There's definitely going to be those cases where we've got some beans that had struggles getting up, and so there's some even that replant kind of decisions being made, whether they should do anything or not, but they have the ability to adapt. But no, there's a lot that's happened over the last week, especially. We had a little stall out maybe 2 weeks ago, but then it didn't take long to kind of get ramped back up again. And we were both actually planting up north last week, and I was pleasantly surprised how mellow the conditions were, how good they were. We're talking up to the northwest part of the state, and so we're able to roll pretty good. Our northeast areas are finally starting to roll. I think they've missed out finally on some rains and dried out the late last week into this week, so I think we are going to have a lot. Soybeans will always have kind of that. We'll get to about 95% until then we think about the double crop that comes into the picture. But yeah, we're going to hit a lot of acres this week.
Yep. I was even in northern Indiana, I've talked on this podcast about my friend Denise Scarborough up there in LaPorte County, and she's like, man, it's just been so slow going. And last week it was, all right, we finally get to join in on the fun. Yep. It's started to dry up. We've started to have some nice weather here, and we could finally go. She said they finally let her start doing some seed corn, and like it seems like everyone across the state here is finally getting moving in some way, shape, or form. And you mentioned the northeast side of the state. It seems like they're the ones every year, the last ones to the party.
Yep.
And my buddy Tom Griffith's up there. He sent me a picture of his field, and I was like, when can I come get a boat out there on Lake Griffiths? But with his, he's like, I'm not worried. This is what it is every year. This is no big deal because it'll be fine. I'll get my first round of hay taken care of. We'll get planting done at the same time. I time it this way. I mean, they're just kind of used to it at this point, right?
Yeah.
Well, you get a little diversity, and that certainly helps spread the workload all the way around, right? So whether there's some wheat up there too, right? You think about some of the activities that would go on the wheat if you do any haying, but the rolling ground hopefully helps them a little bit. But there's some of that ground that it stays a touch wet, and so they need to wait a little bit.
Yeah, just a lot of poorly drained soils up there. They've caught a lot more of the rains that other folks have missed. I was talking to colleagues at Ohio State, very similar. I think they have a farm in like Van Wert, Ohio, which is, very kind of similar to that area. Just those regions, East Indiana, kind of similar to those Poimo Blount, just kind of tough, poorly drained soils. And then when they get a rain, they stay saturated for a while. But I am pretty hopeful with the forecast this week, and it seems like they're starting to move and hopefully get wrapped up in those areas.
For the stuff down south that got in a long time ago now, how is it progressing? Are we doing okay now? I mean, we've gotten some rains here and there that should be kind of helping those crops along. I mean, we should be in pretty good shape down there, right?
Yeah, stuff looks pretty good. I've got a couple cooperators down there. I talked to actually a couple agronomists at Superior Ag last week. They were down in kind of that southwest portion of the state. Stuff looks pretty good. Stuff was like V7, V8 in some areas. A lot of stuff's been side dressed already, or just now getting side dressed as we speak. A lot of it's kind of been surprising how good some of it still looks because they caught a lot of rain. I think there was maybe a week or two ago, some of those southern areas caught like 2-3 inches where maybe we had a half inch. But I asked a couple of agronomists down there, they said stuff, the water still drained pretty well and it came out of it pretty good. So they've caught some of that crop, they had some of that cold snap that came through. They've had a little bit of heavy rains, but for the most part, I haven't heard or had any really significant calls regarding, replants or anything like that. We've kind of had some calls of, hey, what do you think? Okay, give it a few days. And then after a few days, a lot of it has come out of it and been fine. So stuff is moving down there. I know a lot of acres have been side dressed and stuff is moving right along.
Yeah, beans on the southern part of the state. Early April, probably 9, 10, 12, 13 thereabouts. And we had some here locally as well, but going into V3, so looking really good. They're going through that awkward stage of life I always talk about. So they're that highlighter green kind of, okay, am I going to get enough nitrogen from the soil or not? And those soils in particular, I think about some of the crawdad soils. I mean, there's just not much nitrogen there anyway. And throw nitrogen, no-till into that as well. So they're going to look a little off this week probably, but hopefully, with the warmer temperatures and drying out, they're going to turn the corner. The nodulation is going to really increase. Probably one thing that I like with the forecast as well is going to be the not just the temperatures, but the winds seem to be sub 10 degrees, 10 mile an hour. Like I look, like at least a few areas I've looked, like it's 8, 9. It's like, okay, it's not going to be 20 or 30, and we're not going to be playing the wind and spraying our neighbor's field for them, right?
So those soybeans right now, they're somewhere in that, 7th to 9th grade period. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah,
right
no,
now?
it is definitely, they're gangly. They look ugly. They're like, okay, that does not match with that. They're drinking 2 gallons of milk a week, and that's still not enough.
Just running us all out of money. Is what
That's right.
Yeah, corn's very similar in that aspect too. A lot more just kind of peaked yellow look, just kind of. But I would say that it's a beautiful thing what heat can do. A lot of times, especially some of these soils start to dry out. We get some heat to them. That crop's really going to start to turn. We've started to notice it quite a bit. It starts to green up and look a lot better.
Yeah.
Well, you think about that also. I mean, I alluded to this, but I mean, the temperatures are there. Both crops are going to get really going, but our weeds are going to get going too. So we need to be on it, and again, to make the most of the nicer conditions that we've got to make sure we stay ahead of it. So I kind of want to also say those areas that had a pre-down that didn't have enough water initially. Okay, do you have any reach back or not with the rains that have come? Some cases you don't, and the weeds have gotten ahead of you. So we probably need to be mindful of going out with an early post on some of these.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of where I want to go next, because we've got to look at some different parts of the state here. Like I mentioned, down south, we're farther along than where we are up here in the north. You mentioned some of the stages that we're at. Let's kind of go from north to south. What stages are we in? What should we be thinking about right now? Because again, some folks are way ahead. Some folks are a little behind. What should we be thinking about right now in terms of fungicide, herbicide? Where are we?
Well, I'll go south to north is how I'll put it, just because that general thought process, and this season it has followed that. They're typically more advanced with earlier in the season planting, temperatures, all of those things. Last year was not the case because they had so much rain last year early, but they're more advanced. So they're just going to be down the road with field management. So in particular, I'm thinking about on the soybean side, herbicide management. So echoing that same thing again, the weeds are going to get growing. They're 80 some degrees. That's coming this week, 85. They're going to grow fast. And so we need to be up on that as you go further north. The central part of the state, depending on where you are, we had some on the Blount Pewamos that we got some April planted, and you can get some of those planting dates, but you can't get every acre done, right? So it's like, okay, yeah, I got some April plantings, but the whole county just didn't get done. And then, over here, over the west central, we had some April plantings. They're V2, V3. So probably a touch early on the herbicide spray, but if we had issues with our pre, we might think about going early and having a follow-up. Going further north, so you mentioned the northwest, Scarborough's and others, our Penny Farm up there. So we're there a week to 10 days on the docket with getting in the ground. So some beans cracking, and some that are probably going to come into VCV1 this week. And so just kind of a sit and wait and see what's coming in another week.
Yeah. What about on corn?
Yeah, a lot of similarities in terms of, weed control. Really pay attention to that. We talked about, having calmer winds. I think that's been the challenge the last couple of weeks. Is you may have had the temps and the conditions, but the winds have been pretty high. So just getting the weeds under control, especially corn. Like, it's a good time. You think about pre's, but then when pre's start breaking a little bit, getting those post sprays out before that canopy closure. But really the big thing is, as I talked about it, Southern Indiana, a lot of this has already been done, but as we move forward is, side dress time. So, Indiana has a lot of side dressed acres, around the state with nitrogen. So it's big time to get that nitrogen out. I always stress every year, just get it on, even if it's, V3, V4, and you feel, well, should I wait till V6, V7? I've seen too many cases where you wait, the conditions are perfect this week, but instead of waiting, and then you start catching rains, and we just don't want to get into the point where we just can't get it on. That happened quite a bit last year, where it was V7 and then it kept raining, and then, you start thinking about, okay, what kind of machinery changes do we have to make and all that. So, if corn's V2, V3, V4 in those areas, beautiful conditions this week, I would go ahead and get out there and get it on. Another great time, especially for corn, to get some of that sulfur out in terms of ATS, mixing it with that 28% or 32% nitrogen, whatever you're using. So great time to get some S out. So yeah, big time is side dress time this time of year. I've seen a lot of it. I would expect to see quite a bit of it this week. We're hoping to do quite a bit of it in our research trials later this week.
When we come back here on the Purdue Crop Chat, we call you Soybean Shaun, but that's only because you don't have anything that goes with, wheat. And wheat, we could call you small grains of Shaun, but I don't know that you'd much care for that. I just don't know that
wheat
that would.
Straw? No, that doesn't work.
No.
Straw man? No.
I don't think you want that either.
No.
I don't think you want that either. But when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about wheat and just talk about some of the research that they're pulling off this year, some of the things that we are looking at this year. We'll talk about that when we come back here on the Purdue Crop Chat from Hoosier Ag Today.
I'm Matthew Chapman, and I farm in Henry County, Indiana. Indiana Soybean Alliance and Indiana Corn Marketing Council invest checkoff dollars into building demand for corn and soybeans internationally. I've seen this work firsthand, and it's been eye-opening to see the growth in these markets, which also brings dollars back to our farms. Promoting U.S. corn and soybeans and increasing global demand is critical to the success of farmers right here in Indiana.
This message is brought to you by the Indiana Soybean and Corn Checkoffs.
We're back here on the Purdue Crop Chat. I'm Eric Pfeiffer. Glad to have you along. And we're here with Soybean Shaun Casteel, Dan Corn Quinn, small grains, Shaun Casteel.
Wheat whey.
I don't think you want that. That
Okay.
that one's not going to stick.
All right, I'm going to just jump in because you're just continue to just be out there. And,
I might just come up with more.
Okay.
Let's talk about wheat.
Sure.
Because it's seems to be doing pretty well across Indiana, especially compared to what's happening nationally.
Yeah, and no, the wheat this year has been ahead of schedule. So what is the schedule, right? But I mean, a 5-year average, probably a better way of putting it. And so we have had some warmer temperatures. Wheat down again, I think main areas of the southwest and the northeast, and we got scattered throughout. But I'd say we're probably a good 7 to 10 days ahead of a normal pace with heading and flowering and all of that. So looking good. So what I like about that is it provides a good opportunity for, okay, southern areas are already going to do double cropping. Our central is kind of that in between. So this some good opportunities if we have harvest stays on that same kind of track of a week to 10 days earlier. That makes a huge difference on making a double crop. The wheat itself, it looks good. I think that there has been some risk out there for head scab, so there's been some applications during flowering, and so just kind of be mindful of that. If you're not familiar with, there's some tools out there. You can search that up for head scab and the risk of fusarium, and so think about those that are flowering now in the north, whether there's a need for that or not. So that's something else to be on the docket with wheat management. Overall, it looks pretty good. I think there's some areas that were a little wet, and so those spots are always going to be a bit weak. Overall, looking good and a good opportunity to maybe make another bit of money with the double crop soybean.
As I sit here and look at, again, we're looking at last week's crop progress report because the new one comes out this afternoon because of the Memorial Day holiday. But looking at wheat, Indiana winter wheat rated 73% good to excellent. Nationally, 27% only rate. I mean, it's just been dry.
Yeah, that's
been the issue.
That's the key right there. Again, it's about the weather. It's about how dry it has been. And again, you think about wheat in particular, you go to some of the plain states, I mean, water is always going to be an issue. And so if you just don't have it, it's going to really be hurting.
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully I think the price has been ticking up a little bit for wheat. So I would say maybe it's above the poverty grass line. So,
That's right. Yeah, it did have some pretty good names of what they call wheat. That's right.
So hard. You don't want to see it out in the plain states, but they're dry. I mean, I was talking even to some agronomists out in Nebraska. Western Nebraska is really rough right now. So a lot of areas in western part of the state, and then areas in the south that are really dry. But looking at our Indiana farmers and Midwest farmers, hopefully, maybe that price can tick up a little bit, and they maybe can capitalize pretty well on some of this good looking wheat.
Well, you talk about western Nebraska. I mean, they were dealing with wildfires not that long ago that they've had to recover from. This has been a tough year for farmers out there, and I think back, it wasn't that long ago that we were dealing with major flooding and major rains out there in Nebraska. How many years ago was that? That wasn't too long ago. I mean, they've just had a rough go of it here of late.
Yeah, no doubt. The weather makes a huge difference out there. And another one on this year, friends up in the Dakotas, just haven't been able to plant because it's been too dry. So, I'm bounced back to the first crops of corn and soy, but it's like, yeah, you can try to get the planter in the ground, but you can't. And so putting dry seed in dry soil is fine, but you wait on the rain. But if you can't even get it to the depth that you want, just park it.
Yeah, they've been dry, and then they had snow, and then they
right. Yeah, frost seeding at that point.
My goodness, yeah.
So let's talk about what's happening again here in Indiana, and obviously at this point, you guys have. I would hope at this point you're done. I mean, you guys kept canceling on me. I would hope that at this point you guys are close to done.
We thought about doing it again today, but that 3 times might be a bit much.
It is pretty nice out there. I was kind of waiting for a text this morning, like, Sorry, Eric. I can't pass up on this weather. But it's
my hands are full with a cup of coffee and a bagel.
Yeah, and telling people what to do. No, it has been nice. And talk about what you guys have been up to. I heard you telling Dan before here, Shaun, before we started the recording, that you do have some left that are kind of being left intentionally, right?
Yeah. So and invariably we'll have planting date trials, just to say, okay, let's create different environments, different growing seasons within the same kind of soil. And so we'll purposely have later planting dates, and then we often cross that with some sort of management. So whether it's a seed treatment that may do really well with earlier plantings that tend to be cool or wet, and it's like, okay, do you really need that seed treatment with a later planting date? Or there's some biologicals that are still out there, or there's some varieties that you need to do some interactions with. The maturity group is a little bit later or shorter. So yeah, we've got some that are still delayed. We'll get one in this week, and then probably wait another couple of weeks and finish up that trial. We've got some that we talked about winter wheat. We've also been playing around some other covers, so we're letting covers really get big. So I was just talking to my student this morning. We've got some that are at enthesis and 4 foot tall. So we're going in and planting into those kind of green conditions, a lot of biomass. And then some alternative cover crops that maybe even have a cash value, like a cover cress or something like that. So we got some of those left to do.
I think one thing try to understand especially with research, right, is a lot of times to get the optimum of something, we have to go to the extremes, right? I remember I had this conversation, I think last year at a field day, a farmer going through some of our plots and some of our treatments, and he told me, well, a farmer would never do that. And I said, exactly. You're exactly right. But we have to be able to find that optimum, whether it be with seed or planting or rates or fertilizers or all these things. So a lot of times we have to get the two extremes so that we can capture that optimum. So sometimes I say sometimes, a lot of times we do stuff out of the norm, right?
They're called treatments, right? Yep. It's a treatment.
Yeah.
And so it's like, some of it is, okay, you can have a treatment that's a placebo effect, right? You're just like, yeah, we do it because it should help. And then others like, why in the world did you do that? And so, yeah, you have to have those extremes.
Yeah.
What about you, Dan? What have you been up to?
What have I been up to? Wow, that's a great,
barbecue and
barbecue.
Your boss is listening. He asked me to ask you that question.
I'll hold off on the comment.
He's genuinely curious.
Yeah, we've very similar story on our front. We actually we didn't have any delayed planting trials this year. So we actually finished planting all of our trials last week. So a lot of us, both of us, it often takes, we might start third week of April, but for us, it often takes about a month, it seems like, before we get everything in, sometimes a little bit longer.
Because you can't just sneak out, right? I mean, so some of these things, so they're 2 hours away just truck driving, let alone getting tractor and planer if you got special equipment. It's like you can sneak out if it's out your back 40, right, and get in before that squall comes in, but you can't just sneak out when it's 2 hours away or got to go through Indy, for heaven's sakes.
Yep. So we, get a lot of stuff in the south, and we do a lot around here, and then we have to work our way up north. So yeah, to Sean's point, Northwest Indiana, we had some good conditions last week. We're able to wrap up with some of our planting. But now we're just immediately it seems like as soon as you get done with planting, then you start back over because we start side dressing. We do a lot of side dress treatments around the state. We do a lot of foliar treatments out there, foliar spray applications. But it starts the data collection process, right? We start everything from, initial soil samples to we assess, stand and uniformity on every trial that we do. Just getting everything ready. We take plant samples early, plant samples late, do different ratings, vigor, emergence, stuff like that. So it seems like as soon as you are done planting, then it rolls right into, doing some of these more application periods, and then really the data collection period that really takes up a lot of our time, really the entire growing season. But, a lot of our research trials look pretty good. I'll be curious, one thing, Southern Indiana, as that crop progresses, you can start thinking about, one thing at least to get in people's mind down that part of the state is disease, right? Start thinking about some of the diseases and scouting for some of those diseases as that crop progresses. Last week, I think I was told somewhere at V7, V8, they start getting V8, V9, V10 as we approach to tassel and some of those regions, start thinking about disease. But yeah, what we've been doing is planting and got wrapped up, and then now we start side dress treatments and foliars and data collection for the rest of the year.
It might just be about time to get Darcy in here to talk about some disease because it is that time. It is that time. Yeah. Guys, what else here? I mean, again, we're awaiting these numbers, but we all kind of imagine that they're pretty high. Heck, here across the state, maybe pretty darn close to done. I mean, really could be very close to done here across Indiana, which, by the way, here on Tuesday was putting a little bit of pressure on grain markets. Not the best news, but still good news that we're getting this planting taken care of. What are we thinking about right now? What's on your mind, Sean?
Well, it goes back to what our mantra is most of the growing season. Let's go scout, right? We need to get out there and so, okay, how did things work? Did we do a good job planting? Did we have any issues on the corn front with a starter and furrow? Do some early season assessments of what's out there, just overall stands, right? For soybean side, I say, give me 100,000 plus or minus 20 and you're fine, right? And again, there's different, I mean, I'm very loosely with how I'm saying that right now, but if we have stands that are 70,000, that's still a gray area whether they're doing anything, especially now at the end of May. But beyond that, it's also like, okay, we put some investments out there, whether it's a seed treatment, whether it's a new carrier for a lubricant that also has biologicals, or you got something else out there. Let's go dig up some plants. Do you have some initial early season vigor effects, right? And so go out and take those notes. We rush to get things in the ground. We all do it. And now we breathe. You got some side dressing going on, and you got some spray. But I was like, we need to go out there and do some early accounts to say, okay, yep, it had a vigor effect or not. Now, does that translate all the way through? If it's a no, with some of these treatments, like, okay, we didn't have an effect at all visually or root growth. It's like, okay, did I have a condition that was fit for it? Take those notes down and be done. But because it's not going to be another week and we're thinking it's county fair time or it's 4th of July, and before we know it, and we lose out on that opportunity to say, yeah, we have an effect or not. So scouting and seeing what treatment and what management. That's where I'm at.
Dan, he mentioned the 4th of July. I mean, boy, this corn is going to be well above knee high.
Knee high by the Memorial Day? It doesn't have the same ring.
Yeah, I mean, what we were
There's a better one now, so I'm going to interrupt you. It's not knee high by 4th of July. It's not even about corn. It's green to thigh by the 4th of July soybeans.
Yeah, I mean that's
So
that's what
I
we
had
need.
to get that, and we got to get that thing canopied before the end of June.
And we've got to get that trademarked. We've still got a lot of work to do.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. All right, we got that other crop. Corn.
But I mean we've been looking shoulder high by the 4th of July.
I want head high.
Head high by the 4th of July.
Tassel sounds good to me.
Yeah,
But we're getting there, right?
I've had to explain, there's a lot of people out there that don't understand agriculture. Explain that knee high by the 4th of July in a state like Indiana, that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing.
That's a bad year.
And
shoulder high depends on who you're talking to as well,
shoulder
right?
high, yeah. Southern Indiana shoulder high, that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So
if that's Dan, that's not good. If that's Dikembe Mutombo, we're okay. Yeah, that's all right.
Exactly. Yep. So a lot of the similar stuff as Shaun says, just get out and start looking at stuff, right? I love side dressing corn because it's the best way to scout your crops is take a look at stuff as you're going through the fields. Especially with corn, right? Pay attention to how it looks. I always joke that I work with a lot of engineers. They're trying to develop every single sensor that's known to man. I always say, hey, we have 32,000 sensors out in the field, right? So what is that crop telling you? And what can we say this every year? What can we learn from this year that we can take to the next year? That's how you keep getting better. So what's working, what's not working? Especially in tighter years, right? When you think about, hey, we invest a little bit in this in-furrow treatment or this foliar treatment. I mean, does it look better with it? Does it stand better? Was the emergence better? Is there any indications that this is providing me a benefit or not? So pay attention to that stuff. Look at those, walk those fields, look at the stand, look at the emergence, uniformity, look at the overall just color of the crop. It's way easier to walk cornfields now than it is in the 4th of July. So, we have a lot of technology now with UAVs and stuff like that to be able to look at things. Is one hybrid doing better than the other? I have a few trials this year where almost to the line we had some hybrids that one emerged a lot better than the other one did. So pay attention to that stuff and just think about, okay, this is really providing a benefit or not, and maybe is there something that we can learn from this year to take for next year. And then as we progress, right, and you talked about having Darcy on, I think that's an important piece because we are going to start getting into the realm of disease. Especially that crop. I always say when corn gets side dressed, it's got its nutrition, get a little bit of moisture, hopefully, and then get some heat. That crop's going to take off like a rocket. And that's when we start thinking about, disease pressure and stuff like that at that time. So yeah, just get out and start looking at it. Pay attention to it. How does it look? Does it look good? Doesn't look good? And try and understand, is there any aspects of management that you've done this year that you're pretty excited about that maybe helped a little bit or some that didn't, and then start thinking about, okay, how's that crop going to perform this year, but also what can we take to next year?
Well, and you mentioned all of this data, and you guys are pretty lucky. I've been there at the Indiana Corn and Soybean Innovation Center in this room with that all of the data goes into, and it's a pretty powerful room there. It's got a lot of computers, everything else. I don't think most farmers have that.
Well, I don't know how much I actually use. Versus just the two eyes and what they can see.
Yeah. But I'm fairly confident most farmers don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a lot of data, and what should farmers do with that data? I think that's the ongoing question every year. But you're right. There's still a lot that can be gained just from what can we see, what's out there, and then we can figure out what to do with the data later on. So, guys, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it, and we're gonna have to get together here soon and get Darcy in here so that we can talk about disease. Somebody get on her schedule, okay? She's very busy.
Darcy's very busy.
She is, and very important, more so than us.
Way more important,
very,
yes.
very important.
You've bestowed the queen title to her, so clearly.
Yeah, I have.
I don't know if she likes it.
I don't think she much cares for Darcy Disease Queen. Salenko. But we'll see if we can't get her in here nonetheless. Yes. Thanks, guys. We'll do this again next time on the Purdue Crop Chat. We do want to thank our sponsors, the Indiana Soybean Alliance and the Indiana Corn Marketing Council. Thank you very much, and thank you for watching and listening. This has been the Purdue Crop Chat from Purdue Extension and Hoosier Ag Today, Indiana's Farm Network.
This has been Purdue Crop Chat, a regular series featuring Purdue Extension's Dr. Dan Quinn and Dr. Shaun Casteel, made possible by the Indiana Corn and Soybean Checkoffs, the Indiana Corn Marketing Council, and the Indiana Soybean Alliance. The Checkoffs are pleased to help bring you agronomy insights from Purdue Extension. Opinions on the podcast are those of the host and guests and not those of the sponsor. Purdue Crop Chat is a service of Purdue University Extension and Hoosier Ag Today. Timely, relevant, credible.